Welcome back to the Business of Becoming. I'm your host, Steffany. Today, we are continuing part 3 of our series, The Art of Becoming, and we will be talking about the art of trusting the process and realizing that you're not behind, you're just being prepared. I've talked about this several times in my podcast, but today I want to identify certain things that you can look for in your process to continue motivating you to stay in it. Because it's very easy to look at your process and say, I want out, or I want to pivot, or I want to detour. And I really want to make sure that you hone into what your goals are, but also really understand that this process, what's it doing for you? What is it really preparing you in and for? Many of you have found yourself, just like me, many moments where we lie awake at night because we are overthinkers, and entrepreneurs are constantly overthinking the what ifs and am I doing this right? Or should I still be doing this? Should I still be in the struggle bus? And you see everybody around you, you see your mentors, you see people that you want to be like, and everything they're doing is falling in the right direction. They're getting the likes, they're getting the views, they're getting the clients, they're getting the houses, and you're trying to follow in that steps, but it's just not working for you. That's a big indicator that you're in the process. Because I guarantee you, a lot of these people that you look up to or that you want to be like have had moments in their lives where it was really silent. There was not glamour and glory and lights and people looking at them to be like them. There was a moment where it was a lot of silence, and there was a lot of just trusting the process and trusting where they were in that process. And maybe you need to understand that you're in that preface right now. You're in the plot, which is what we like to call it. And that process, that part in your plot, it's really just the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And you have to identify that. You have to call it out and say, oh, this is just my process right now. This is where I'm at in this part of the process. Because if not, you're just going to continue beating yourself up for every time you didn't get the client, for every time you didn't get the amount of likes that you wanted, for every time that you didn't, you know, highly succeed. In this part of your process, failure is okay. And I really want you to understand failure, there's space for failure in your process. In fact, failure is a huge part of your process. It is a pivotal part of your process on where you're going. Because without failure, you're not going to understand how to have the bandwidth for success. You're in that point where you've sent your pitch, where you've planted seeds, where you've been to every networking event, you've been to every conference, and it's just like, dude, nothing's coming back. I've been there multiple times in my life, and I just want to encourage you that a big part of this section in your process, a lot of it is how you can handle it mentally. We're going to go through these 3 steps that I'm going to name on, how to trust your process. But a big part of this, before anything, is your mental strength to be able to understand that this process is probably going to be a little longer than you thought. One thing I want to make clear is your mind and your thoughts create your reality. Your thoughts create the reality that you live in, because maybe you went to a conference or maybe you went into a business meeting and you have this whole idea of how it went terrible and how you didn't say the right things and it didn't land in the right way. And maybe you are right, but maybe you're not. Maybe they did like you. Maybe you just need to learn how to close better. Maybe you need to continue the follow up. It's happened to me time and time again where I've gone to a client's house and I've given my pitch and I'm all in my head like, this is terrible. I did a horrible job. I could have done so much better. And I lived in that reality that I sucked and that I wasn't going to get it. And then they call me back the next day saying, hey, yeah, we're ready to sign the contract. So that entire time between them calling me and me leaving the house or leaving the appointment, I'm just beating myself up and discouraging any future things I could have even done within that time frame. I'm just beating myself up and creating even more paradigms and blockages in my mind, which is not what you want in the part of the process. You got to learn how to deal with failure. You got to learn how to also understand that not everything is failure. Everything could probably have not gone the way you wanted, but it still got you closer. So it's controlling that part of your reality. All of that leads to a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of angst. Man, I can tell you so many times in my life where I let my thoughts become my reality. And in fact, I wasn't anything like what my mind thought I was. I was so much further ahead, and I was viewed differently by many others in the way that I viewed myself. So, very key thing I think to start in this episode is check check how you see yourself. So, really important, I think, before we get into everything, check first how you see yourself, because that is an extremely important tool in your process. Because if you see yourself as a failure, you see yourself as someone who won't make it, won't succeed, or it's just, gonna wing it and you might not get anywhere, then your process is never really going to have an ending, because the process is to build. The process is the training ground to success. And if you don't see yourself as a person of success or someone who can succeed, then you're not going to ever get there. So check your mental health. Write down how you see yourself. I've mentioned this in a podcast before. My therapist recommended that I did this exercise, which was writing about 50 things that I like about myself. And that took forever. I didn't know what I liked about myself. I just knew the labels that I was. I was a mom. I was this, I was that, but not necessarily what I liked about myself. So that's so important in the part of your process. Matter of fact, actually, I'm going to be honest. I'm in a whole different process right now on trying to diversify even more what I do. And I actually am doing this exercise with one of my business partners where I am having us write about 100 and something things that we wanted added to our lives. And it's a little bit biblical, because it goes based off of a verse that says, seek first the kingdom of God and all things shall be added to you. So I wrote down the ways that I wanted to seek, the kingdom, and how I can do that right now in the most practical way, because I'm not going to be able to pray every single day. I mean, I'm not that person. I know that, especially in the season of my life. But I am definitely somebody who has a lot of hope and who has a lot of faith, not just in herself, but in what I know God can do, because I've seen it happen in my life. So I wrote that down first, and then I made a list of the other things I wanted added to my life. Because if I do these things, I know, because the word of God says it, right, that these will be added. And forget about me wanting any of these things. The coolest thing that happened while I was creating this list, and this was legitimately recent, was I was able to audit my heart. I was able to really audit what my desires were in this season of my life. In this part of my process, what was deeply just there. And you can go in and write 100 and so many things, the things that you want, like a new Cartier bracelet, a new car, whatever. And I realized so much more in this season that there was nothing really there that was material. It was, out of all the 100 and something things I wrote, maybe like 2%, 1%, 2% of it was material. And that was such a very interesting moment to reflect on and say, oh, okay, this part of my process, this part of this new process that I'm in really wants this kind of stability, really wants this kind of structure, really wants to become this kind of person. And I encourage you, if you are kind of in a process and you have no idea what you really want and how you really feel, you just want to make money, write these things down first. Audit your mental health, audit your heart, your desires, and that would give you a great motivational tool to continue striving for these things in silence, in confidence, and in this process, it will allow you to continue striving for it because now you have something to tie it to. So let's go into how you can actually trust this process, right? And the art of becoming, we're just trying to become better human beings. We're trying to become the greatest version of ourselves right now. How can we trust this incredible process that I keep saying? Step one, you have to reframe the gap. You have to reframe that part of your process, which is where you are at, to who you want to become. You have to reframe it. What does that mean? That means instead of calling it delay, instead of calling it failure, call it character development. Call it training ground. Call it whatever you want. But if you can say this to yourself daily, hey, this is my development. This is where I'm developing this. This is where I'm developing that. You can start looking at this more positively, which in fact attracts more positive things and positive people around you, rather than sitting in just agony. Misery loves company. So trust me, other miserable people will find you, and they will not add anything to your life to get you out of this process faster. They will just allow you to sit there and say, yeah, your life sucks just like mine. All right. Like, that does absolutely no edifying. It just chips away at your character and chips away at your faith. I want you to look at it a little bit more practical. An athlete doesn't call their training a delay from their championship. No, they call it training. They call it building. They call it I'm working, right? Because they're looking at the end game. They're looking at, this is what I need to do to get to my championship, to get my ring, to get what it is that I want. Every day you show up for yourself in silence, it's another day where you're preparing yourself for what's coming. I love sports, and I think I've mentioned this a bunch of times. MJ, which to me is the GOAT, so Michael Jordan, you hear that name and automatically you think greatness. Automatically you think success. But Michael Jordan, incredible as he is, and an incredible athlete, and such an incredible work ethic, he got cut from his varsity team. The greatest of all time got cut from his varsity team. And if you read a little bit more about his life and all of these things, you can see how much he had to really just put his head down in the silence of his process and continue doing what he knew he had to do to get to where he wanted to be. And in a later interview that he had, he said, I've failed multiple times in my life, and it's because of that I'm successful. In one of the interviews that he gave, he said, I've failed over and over again in my life, which is why I'm able to be successful. And that is just so true to everything that is this part of your gap, this process for you. You need to learn how to learn from failure. You need to educate yourself on your failures. Sarah Blakely, if you don't know who she is the person who invented Spanx, which, if you're a girl, you thank her, okay? Especially if you're a mom with a mom pouch and you really want to wear that little black dress again, you, my dear, should thank Sarah Blakely. Send her a letter, send her a thank you note. But she built this billion-dollar company, and she did not come from money. She did not come from, well-known business, this, that, like education was. She didn't. She just had a dream. She was selling, if I'm not mistaken, she was selling fax. She was a door-to-door saleswoman selling fax machines at that time. And she kept her head up and she kept going. And she said something in an interview that I thought was super cool. She had her dad every day ask her, what did you fail in today? And if she didn't have an answer on what she failed in, he would be disappointed. And this is an older person. This is not just some 15-year-old kid. She was older. And I find that so important and so prevalent, because failure doesn't mean that you're not getting anywhere. Failure is proof that you are trying. Failure is proof that you are giving it whatever you can at this moment. So you have to understand that the first thing you need to do is reframe what this process and this gap looks like to you, and understand that you got to make that failure this, that. Reframe it. Say it's my training ground. It's my building season. It's the time that I've got to make myself strong and build a foundation that can withhold all kinds of failure, but as well withhold all kinds of success. Because that's what matters, is not just how much you can hold successfully, because you can lose everything in 2 seconds. I've seen it happen multiple times to many people. How well can you get back up from that? How well can you get back up from failure? In this process of your gap, you're building character, you're building strength, you're building resilience. You need that to be able to withhold all the incredible things that happen when success comes to you. This brings me to my next step in how to trust this process. Look for the lesson, not just for the result. Because yes, a lot of you are in a for-profit business. You're not starting nonprofits. You want some sort of results. You want income. You want to prove that you are, you're successful enough to get the things that you want in life, right? Things cost money, right? Okay. So I really think that if you can position yourself, especially during the time of your process, to look for lessons, look for ways that you are becoming better at things rather than just the results, it will allow you to get results much greater in the future. It will allow you to weed out maybe even clients that are not going to be worth your time or your energy. In the beginning of my walk, in the beginning of my business, I took every client. And you can ask everyone that knows me. I took any client because obviously through the process of, what I was, my checklist. But if they had it, boom, they were my client. I didn't care if they were just super mean. I didn't care if they were needy. I didn't care if they liked me or they didn't like. I didn't care. I took every client. And I took every claim. I took everything that even if it wasn't worth my time, even if I was actually losing money than gaining, I was gaining experience. I was wanting and hungry for lessons to learn, to say, oh, this is what this means. Oh, this is how I can do this better. Oh, this is how I can actually help this person or anyone in this situation in the future. I was looking for lessons left and right. I wasn't just looking for results. I wasn't. And what I later learned now over a decade later, that now I can see is I know now which clients I want. And I can be choosy rather than before where I was just trying to find every lesson. So I took every client. Now it's no, I can't do this, or no, this is not worth my time. This is actually going to cost me more time and it's not going to be as beneficial. I can be choosy now because I've learned from my lessons and all of my investments rather than just the results that I was trying to get. Like, I didn't make a lot of money because I was helping more and learning more. Now I can actually see what's more fruitful for me, which I think is extremely key. But that leads me into something that I want to talk about. Looking for lessons is important. And I don't want to say that failure is the most important thing in the world, but man, it is such a key part of your process. And I'm going to say this a couple of times in the episode, so you might be a little annoyed at me. But success without struggle is actually really fragile. If you don't have struggle or some sorts of failure in your route to success, there's a few things that might hinder you, or there's a few things that honestly can be very detrimental to you, to your family, and to your future if you haven't gone through some sort of struggle or through some sort of failure. One of the things I want to highlight is if you don't go through struggle or through setbacks, right, you don't learn how to have the emotional capacity to withstand when that actually occurs in your success. Because when things come super easy and money is quick to come, you make money fast. When a setback happens, when something's resistant, your emotional capacity hasn't been built to understand how to handle that situation yet. So you might not be able to train or lead people effectively in that moment. And maybe you won't even be able to lead yourself on how to handle this situation because you have not experienced that before you got to your success. If you don't build emotional capacity, you don't know how to handle setbacks. You don't know how to handle stress. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, being an entrepreneur and being a successful entrepreneur, it is a very, very stressful job. It is one that I absolutely love, and I cannot see myself doing anything other than this, but it is a very stressful job. It is a high, in most cases, right? It is a high stress environment. And not that you can't create the culture of calm and whatnot. Yeah, you can. But as the leader, you have to learn how to carry that stress. And you have to be able to relay it in a calm manner where people don't feel like the world's on fire. If you've never experienced setbacks or resistance or situations where it requires you to make a difficult decision, your emotional capacity is still a baby. And you will lead people from a very immature place, which will then lead your success to go down real fast. It'll go down real fast. Your influence will be shot quickly too, because we're in the business of becoming great people and leading others to become great. So you need to learn how to have this emotional capacity so that you can be able to teach others how to handle stressful situations. And if they didn't hit their markers, if they didn't hit their goals, you got to learn how to deal with that. And that is built through setbacks, failures, all of that, and time. When success brings more eyes, more rewarding, more people in your environment, I mean, it could just become very overwhelming. So if you don't have the emotional capacity to regulate that, it's going to be a very difficult situation. That's why many people, when they hit a level of success, they self-sabotage it. Because if you were never stretched in your process to withhold success, you will self-sabotage it. Because like I said, quick money comes in, but it can go just as fast as it came in. And praise comes in from many people and validation comes in from many people just as fast. You do one mistake, you do one thing that people are not aligned with, and they can tear you down in 2 seconds. So if you don't have the emotional capacity through failures, through having to go through a process, you will not be able to sustain success. You will self-sabotage yourself. You will continue playing victim roles instead of roles that require you to pick people up rather than allow people to just leave you in the pit. So I encourage, again, emotional capacity, extremely important when you are trying to trust yourself in the process and trying to get out of it and learn how to get out of this process and see success in your future. Which leads into the second thing. Your identity stays fragile. If you have not been through struggle, there's no way you can trust this process because your identity is built, and I've said this multiple times in my other podcast, your identity is built based on what others continue to say about you. And having success in this life, being able to get through a process, requires your identity to not be built on anything other than overcoming these failures in your silence, overcoming these promises to yourself and keeping them and saying, I'm going to do this, and actually building from that character. Struggle forces you to build an identity that basically says, even if this is a bust, even if this is a decision that's going to make me suffer later, I'm going to try it. And I found myself many times in that decision when I've risked things for business, when I've risked things for employees, when I've risked things even for my personal relationships and in my love life. It allows you to build it allows you to be freaking bold, because people convince confidence is something that you have, but there's two difference. There's a difference between confidence and being bold. Being bold just means you're just going to do it, and it is what it is. Like, you have nothing to lose a lot of the times, right? But confidence is being able to say, yeah, I can be bold, but I know that something's going to happen. There's a huge difference. I was very bold as a kid. I was super bold. I didn't care. I didn't have much confidence, but I just didn't care. I was the first one to go and play with a group of friggin' 20-something-year-old men at 12 years old at a park, and I would start playing basketball with them. And I knew that I sucked, but I didn't have confidence. But I was bold enough to just say, hey, put me in. There's a big difference between the two. And struggle, again, it forces you to say, like, even if this falls apart, I'm gonna try it. It builds that kind of character in you, which is what we're looking for as leaders. It's what I look for when I look towards someone that I want to be like. It's what I look towards a relationship that I eventually want in my life. Yes, I going through this divorce and it sucks. And then why the hell would I even think about getting married again? Why? Because guess what? I've been through struggle, bro. I've been through way more struggle than just my divorce, and that has been tough. But I've been through way more than that. I've been through death. I've been through pain. I've been through depression. I've been through anxiety. I've been through so many different things in my life. I've let people down that I would have never wanted to let down in my life. So when I look at other marriages and I look at people, there's still a hope in me that says, man, I want that even after what I've been through. I still want it. And you don't get to this point in your life if your identity is still based on the failures that you've had and the praises of people. You don't get that. And again, in this whole series, we're becoming people. We're creating this artwork of ourselves. So take the paintbrush from anybody else around you and actually start drafting what it should look like for you. And let God be the one to paint it. I don't know, whoever it is that you look at or look towards to, but let it be something that you have that ability to control. Without struggle, without failures, you don't learn this incredible tool that you need in your life, which is discernment. And it's an insight, it's wisdom, it is what all the old people and their gray hairs are. It's going through certain things to allow you to have a better internal judgment of the situation or people around you. Failure, it teaches you not just what looks good, but what is good. Okay, not just who is around you, but who to trust around you and who to have in these inner circle parts of your life. A big one, at least for me, it teaches you when to pivot and when to push. When you have discernment in certain things in your life, you understand and you can really realize, okay, I can push for this relationship. I can push for this connection that I have with someone, whether it's professionally, romantically, whatever, or it's time to pivot because this is not helping me. This is not building me in this season and this process that I'm going. This is actually bringing me backwards. And if you don't have discernment, then you don't know where you're at. You don't know if the steps you're taking is forward or backwards. And the big part is you don't know who to trust. And that's happened to me time and time and time again, especially in business. Like, you give so much to people because part of who I am, I'm generous. That's who I am. I know that. I'm someone who loves to share. I'm someone who loves to bring others up. And sometimes I give so much of myself and realize that I trusted the wrong people. I've had people come and steal my contracts. I've had people come and steal money, from me. I've had it, and I'm not trying to say, yay, that happened to me. Look at me. Because that's a failure. I chalk that as a failure in my life. But I learned from it. If I never would have had someone backstab me, lie, steal, cheat their way to the way that I had to struggle for success, then I would have never been able to build the character and the discernment to know, oh, this is a just me person. And I tell you, because I have business conferences, I have business meetings every day. I have Zoom calls all the time, and I meet with people every day. And I promise, when the moment that I sit down, I can tell you if this is somebody who's just interested in what they can get from me, or if this is somebody who's willing to really sit this out and try to see how we could build a better industry, a better environment, or something that is better for us as a global, and it carries discernment. It's the same thing with relationships. It's the same thing with friendships. There's people who just are there to bring you down, and then there's people who are there to lift you up. And there's people who can be the one that holds your hand during the moments that are hard. And then there's people who are just gonna anchor you down like weights. So building discernment, very important to have. And it can only be given or learned, and it could legitimately only be experienced and learned and gained from struggle, from failure. Because if not, you live in this bubble boy world that everybody's great, everything's good, nothing bad's gonna happen. And I know a lot of people like that. They don't have much success. And sometimes it doesn't bother them, but that's not who I want to be. I'm becoming somebody that I look up to. I'm becoming somebody that my kids can look up to. I'm becoming somebody that has friggin' as many stripes as a damn zebra at this point, but it's still standing. You're still creating something that's beautiful. So this is the part that I'm getting to, because I went off on a rant, which I'm sure Frank will probably edit out. But this is the part what I'm getting to is that there's something called the training ground effect. There's something called what I was mentioning of how you reframe that part of where you're in your process, rather than just calling it a season of defeat, because you can easily do that. You can call this part of your life a season of failure, a season of defeat. And no, if you want to, go for it. But if you're on right now watching this podcast, then you are already making a step that a failure wouldn't do. You're already doing something that someone who's just not gonna go many places in life, you're doing something that they wouldn't do. You're trying to better yourself. You're trying to say, oh, wait, hold up. Let me see how I can get myself out of this situation. And yes, this is the training ground effect. All of this is getting to this point where you need failure to identify, I'm learning, and to create a life where it's about consistency. It's about trust without actually having anything to prove it. It's creating faith without evidence. It's creating a kind of level of work ethic. And honestly, I genuinely think a lot of these younger generations, I was reading something the other day that was saying that Gen Z and the other generation after that, I don't know what it is, that they lack work ethic. And I'm not surprised. And it's not to be, a bully, but it's to be honest, like a lot of the generations under us, and I'm even talking about my kids, they don't know what the struggle is that they have to go through. They don't understand that back then we couldn't just put on a freaking show and have it happen in 2 seconds. We had to wait for the damn commercial to finish. We had to look through the channel because we didn't have a freaking guide. So we had to just find, and sit there and wait until we found something that we liked and go through 60 different cable TV channels, or wait until the commercial finished so that we knew what was actually on. I mean, again, it's a joke and it sounds funny and it's true, but it is struggle that you learn patience. It's in struggle that you learn, okay, timing. The timing is extremely important in our lives. And it is in that failure, it's in that struggle where you realize, okay, I gotta wait a little bit longer. This is a season of just rebuilding in silence. This is a season of not letting that many people into my life and learning to trust that process for yourself. Discipline without validation. Like, I can't tell you how much I wish I learned that when I was younger. It would have saved me from doing so many things for men, for people that I just wanted to be proud of me, and give me some sort of place. And in so many of the darker seasons that I've been through in my life over the last decade, I've learned heavily what discipline without validation looks like. And it's gotten me to a much healthier place. And I'm not perfect. I mean, I was just in therapy yesterday and they still said something was wrong with me. But it's gotten me to a place where I can go to the gym. I can show up as a mom. I can show up as a daughter. I can show up as a sister. And I don't need them to tell me, oh, thank you for being there for me as a friend, or thank you for being there for me as a daughter. I didn't need a validation. I learned that it's just part of who I am. It's part of the discipline that I built. These are the exact traits, I believe, that are required to not just have success, but to sustain it. The last step in trusting your process in this series of The Art of Becoming is protect your faith. I just heard a video actually last night of someone that has, so much faith, but very, and when I say faith, I don't mean like just faith, a spiritual kind of faith. I mean faith in themselves. And I heard him talk about how he started this journey of creating content and, just recording himself and recording his gym and sessions and this and that. And everything that he had was not because he had a great camera crew or, it wasn't even because he had charisma. It's just he had faith that what he was doing was going to work. And when people called him crazy and when people said that, dude, you're wild, like, you don't have the face for a camera, or you don't have the right words to say, you don't have the right education, you don't have the right training. He said, okay, well, I got faith. I'm going to do something that many people won't do because they might have the training, they might have the charisma, they may even have the look, the education, they might have everything, but they lack faith. They lack faith in themselves to get through this process of learning. Because that's what it is. When you start something, you go into a process of just learning and trying to figure it out. But very quickly, you lose faith and you give up. And it's happened to many of us. How many people have started ventures and failed? And at the first sign of failure, at the first sign of resistance, at the first sign of just rejection, they stop. I know several people that that's happened to. And if you can't protect the faith that you have in yourself, I don't care how great your idea is. It could be the most, the next freaking Elon Musk kind of idea. But if you can't protect the faith that you have in yourself, and you let your mind wander and you let people's input make such a wave in your life, you will never get out of the process of just trying. You will never get out of the process of this training ground because you'll stay stuck in it, and you'll never see the success that you want in that field. You'll never see the success that you want from that one idea. And I'm going to tell you, when I started working, I was a child. I was 13, 14 years old, and I had no real education. I had no real substance for things. I had no real confidence, but God, man, I had faith, because we came from a 1-bedroom apartment, living with 6 people, dealing with having to, find ways to eat and this and that. And it's not to come with this Bodhisattva story, because it's not, because thankfully I had the greatest parents in the world. No matter what they've been through, they just kept striving and making sure that we had food on our table and making sure that we had what we needed. What am I saying though? In the back, circle it, is I had faith because I didn't want to go and ask my mom as a 13 and 14-year-old. I didn't want to go and ask my mom and my dad for money when I know that they were counting every penny. When they were counting every nickel and dime to make sure that we had things covered in our lives, the last thing that I wanted was to ask them for something. So I had faith in myself that I was going to be able to come to a place and be at a point in my life where I can take care of them. And thankfully, I'm not sitting here to say that, but thankfully, so many times in my life have I been able to be there for my parents. And if it wasn't because I had faith for myself to believe that I could do that for them, through various seasons of my life where I felt like a damn failure, and through many times where I failed them, I still had faith in myself that I can get back up and that I can continue understanding and identifying where I was in the process of my season. And it's so important, I'm telling you, to protect your faith in that, because it's so easy to just sit back and say, I suck, or I'm never going to find, this kind of success, or I'm never going to find the perfect person to, come into my life. Like, no, you've got your own damn process. You got your own cross to carry. You have your own purpose to reveal to yourself, so that when somebody does come into your life, they either fit or they don't. They either complement or they don't. So protecting your peace, protecting the faith that you have in yourself is pivotal to continuing to get out of just a crappy season or a difficult training ground into what you want your success to look like. The world is going to tell you, if it's not visible, it's not real. If it's not growing fast, it's not growing. And we have social media, we have all these different things that show us highlight reels of people, starting something and it's $1 billion idea, or a couple that just got together and they are already married. Like, the world is going to throw time as if it's like, I don't know, like if it's a race, like, at all. Get that out of your mind. Like, life is not a race. I did not think that at the age of where I'm about to be 32 years old, that I would have been successful in business. I would have failed in many businesses, that I would have been a single mom of 2 kids, that I would have had, so many tragedies and death happen to me. But at the same time, like, I've had great things happen in my life. Yeah, I had a failed marriage, but I got 2 freaking crazy kids that I love. And I learned so much about myself in that process of grieving, of losing a life that I thought that I wanted. I learned so much about myself, about how much I was becoming somebody that I didn't know and I didn't like. And somebody that I was never going to be able to have the capacity to really be, because that wasn't me. I wasn't going to be able to have the capacity to carry on a relationship being somebody that I wasn't, being untrue to myself. Your growth isn't a timeline. It's not. Your growth is your own damn timeline, whatever you want it to be. Because I know many people that they could be somewhere so much further in their lives. I'm telling you, I met so many of these individuals where I look at them like, damn, they have so much potential. They have so many great gifts and talents. Why are they still stuck there? And I've asked myself that question, like, why are they still stuck there? And I realize it's because they don't believe in themselves. I realize because they're racing against, competing with people that they don't have any business competing with. I can't compete with a 21-year-old man who has no responsibilities. I can't. Because in the late nights at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning when he's working, I gotta be home with my babies. Can't compete with that. I just can't. I have my own growth in this season, and I'm learning what that looks like. But back when I was 21 years old, I can't compete with that version of myself, because I was that person at 2, 3 in the morning, still working on the clock and just not caring because I didn't have these kinds of responsibilities. You are perfectly on track with, and I don't say this as like, oh, you're perfect. No, like, you are perfectly on track with the version of yourself that you need for this season. You just need to identify these things in your life right now to understand this process and to actually trust it. Because it's important. It's the most important thing in your life right now, is understanding where you are in your process and being able to trust that you're going to see success out of this. If you don't, then you will continue being in this vicious cycle of your life, and you will stay there. And 10 years are going to go by, and you're going to still be complaining about the same exact thing, and the fact that you are the same exact person, and you deal with the same exact struggles and the same exact insecurities and the same exact financial position, if you don't realize where you're in this process and trust how to get out of it. I've been there. I've been there for years sometimes. But thankfully, I've had people that have given me a good smack on the back of my head, and it made me realize that I'm much more than my problem. I'm much more than my defeats. I'm much more than my failures. And if that's why you're on this episode today, because you need somebody to smack you and tell you, hey, you're much better than what's in front of you right now in the situation, well, Frank tells me not to hit the mic, but I'm going to hit the mic anyways. Bah. For my audio listeners, you are much better than your problem. You are much greater than this season in your life. It's just a small part of your story. It's a small part of your plot. It is not the way that God sees you. It is not the way that you should see yourself. And it's honestly not even the way that many others around you see you. You might think it is, but that narrative, you got to get it out of your head, because others don't even see you that way. And I was in this mental, limbo for a really long time. And I've shared it multiple times with you guys. I remember immediately after the process of my divorce started, I was in a horrible mental state, because I felt like not just a failure, but I felt that I was leading men that valued that I was a wife. They respected me more because I was a wife. I walked into many business meetings, and the fact that I had a ring on my finger was like a level of respect. It was like, hey, you you did something with your life, and that's what people look at marriage sometimes as if it's like an accolade or a trophy thing. Like, oh, you hit this, you made it. And it's not very true. Do I want to get remarried? Absolutely. And I want that, and I want my kids to see that. But mentally, I was in a really bad place because I thought that so many people saw me as a failure and that I was never going to gain influence with them again because my marriage failed. And it's not who's to blame, because this is not, I don't do that. I don't care to tear down anybody. That's not what I'm doing this for. But it still was a failure. It's a failure. And I want to just say that people afterward, when I was in a better place, afterward, people were still there for me. And the people that I was leading were still being led by me and still wanted to be led by me. And they didn't see me for my failures. They didn't see me the way that I had that negative shade on my life. They didn't see me that way. If anything, they were more prone to lift me up and say, damn, you are a freaking conqueror for going through this. And I didn't see it that way at that time. I saw it as, I'm chopped liver on the side of the road right now. Who the hell am I to talk in front of people and lead people when I feel like I failed? And then this podcast started. and then I've seen the immense growth that we've had. And I mean, how many subscribers do we have now, Frankie?
1,300.
1,300 subscribers in what, 8 months? In 8 months, you guys made me feel like I'm doing something right. And it's been a struggle to get here, but thank you. Because again, you care about what's being said and you want to become somebody better in your life. And that's all that this is about. Right? So here's a takeaway. The gap that you're in right now, the process that you're in right now, is not punishment. It's preparation. And this process that you're going is not a delay. It's not just a reroute of you going and making a U-turn. It's actually a detour for you to go through this process and learn about yourself. And you can't get to the destination that quickly, because then you won't be able to acknowledge anything or really receive the greatness that comes with success, because it's far more than just money. There's responsibilities that come with success. There's influence that come with success. That's why you see many people who they get drafted into the NBA after high school, and they were not able to go through that process, and they lost it all. They were reckless. You see many child stars and child musicians and actors and actresses that once they hit a level of success so quickly, so fast, they lose themselves. You hit so much success so fast, so young, and you don't build these qualities to understand where, that process is. And unfortunately, you find yourself in positions where it brings shame, and it brings hurdles that you don't have the emotional capacity to deal with at that age. You're being prepared for exactly who you're supposed to be in the season. And it's actually not who you're supposed to be in the season, but who you're supposed to become. So that the next process that you go through, you have the ability to go through it and be successful to get out of it. Okay? You're going from level to level. You're leveling up like a Super Mario mushroom. But drop in the comments what process you're in and what are you in your process? Like, are you in the watering season of your process? Are you in the harvest season of your process? In this season of your life and in this part of your process. And trust it. You got no other choice. You sit and let this cycle beat you up, or you trust that you're going to be the best version of yourself and get out of it. So thanks again for listening. I can't wait to see you guys next week on this chair. So if you also have any, first, don't forget to like and subscribe. Frank just gave me the book. And second, if you have any topics that you guys want me to talk about, drop it in the comments. I'd love to see what they're at. I mean, I know Frank has the...
Tell them what's happening next week, right?
Next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Next week, we will finish our series of The Art of Becoming. Next week's episode is how to know you are becoming even though life feels unclear right now. So it is an episode that we will probably get a little bit emotional and a little deep, but that's what we're here to do. We're here to open these wounds and make sure that they don't reopen again. So thanks again for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the train next week.